For the second time in 4 years, the City of Peabody will hold a special election for state representative for the 12th Essex District. This time, for the position to fill the unexpired term of Republican Leah Cole, vacated in the fall of 2015. I'm Deanne Healy with the Peabody Area Chamber of Commerce, and together with Peabody Access Telecommunications, we're pleased to bring you this opportunity to get to know the candidates and the issues before you vote in the primary on February 2nd. The Democratic candidates are City Councilor Jim Matsoulis, City Councilor Tom Walsh, and Craig Welton, Director of Nonprofit Best Buddies of Massachusetts. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to answer a question from the panel. Then each candidate will have a chance for a 30-second rebuttal before we move on to the next question. After the last question, each candidate will have a 2-minute closing statement. Questions will be posed by members of the Peabody Area Chamber of Commerce, an organization committed to empowering businesses to succeed while enriching the community. I will ask each of the panelists to now introduce themselves. Bill?
Billy Woods Jr. from P.J. Woods Insurance Agency.
Martha Holden from the Peabody Institute Library.
Phil Richard, president of Phil Richard Insurance.
Sarkis Sarkeesian, owner, president of Sarkeesian Sportswear.
We'll begin with the questions now. Bill, want to go first? And the question will be posed to Councilor Matsoulis.
Given the recent statistics regarding the ongoing opiate crisis that plagues not only Essex County, but the entire country, do you have an opinion on how to best deal and help minimize overdoses and deaths?
Well, let me tell you, that's why I'm in this race. I made a motion on the council floor 30 years ago. There were 2 motions. My first motion was the traffic problem. The other one was the drug problem we had in the city of Peabody. That motion went nowhere. Nobody paid attention to it. Today, over the past decade, we've had 6,600 overdoses in the state of Massachusetts. Our governor is finally doing something about it. Every family has been affected by the drug overdose, whether you're from the poor neighborhoods or the rich neighborhood, we've all been affected by it. As I said, our governor is finally doing something about it. I know he's a Republican, and I will work along with him. If I get elected, I will ask him to put me on the committee to try and save our kids. Do I have any ideas? I do have ideas, and if he puts me on that committee, I have a lot of ideas for him. One would be take our kids out of prison and put them in rehab. They don't belong in prisons. This is an epidemic. These kids are sick. It's not a crime what they're doing, and people have to understand. And we've got to educate our kids at a young age. Now, I'll tell you something. This did not start yesterday. This has been going on since I was a kid. 50 years ago in my neighborhood, we knew about the drug problem. It's been here forever, and it's gonna be here forever. We've got countries that manufacture opiates just to send them to the United States to save our kids. This is a bigger problem than any one of us could imagine. Thank you.
Thank you. Tom?
30 seconds?
30 seconds.
Okay, quickly. We need to fund more beds for addiction rehabilitation. We need to, if you talk to your district attorneys, and I had a conversation with John Blodgett probably 2 or 3 months ago about the minimum mandatory sentences, and there's an effort to reduce those minimum mandatories. If you're the person selling the drugs to the addict, you are somebody who is committing a crime, and you're ruining our communities. And if, you know, as a funeral director, I've seen the end result of what this does to a family, and it is not a good situation. Sorry, okay.
Thank you. Craig?
Regarding specifically how we mitigate overdoses, I think first off, increase funding for Narcan training and usage for police officers. I think that's something that is in the current Senate legislation that's been proposed. Also, I think taking a holistic approach, as both Demo and Tom have discussed, is important, and stop stigmatizing addiction, and try to have opportunities available where people can proactively seek a chance to get their life back. But specifically, I think Narcan training to prevent the overdoses, and then also looking at the regulations for not only heroin, but the prescription drugs as well.
Okay, thank you. This question will be posed to Tom Walsh.
Counselor, Mayor Betancourt has made it a priority of his administration to bring more businesses and residents to a revitalized downtown. The city's had some success in this regard over the past few years. Do you agree with the mayor's focus? And if so, what specifically can Peabody State Rep do to help move the process along?
I do agree with the mayor's focus. Downtown is really a diamond in the rough. And there's a lot of opportunity, I think, for housing projects to be developed above a lot of the storefronts, because I think if we bring the people downtown, that will encourage other businesses to open up. That's when your coffee shops are going to open up, your dry cleaners. Although we have some, we need more. And then perhaps a couple more restaurants and areas where people want to come, eateries. That will all come. Foot traffic will increase if you have housing down there. So a state representative can help you with that, working with housing and economic development agencies. Mass development, as you know, has been helpful in funding some grants to the city so that we can continue the realignment of our traffic pattern downtown. That will help. That helps pedestrian traffic. There are a whole host of things. And one of the things, if you look at what happened in Boston recently with GE's announcement that they're coming to Boston, what that's going to do is have a ripple effect. And there was an article the other day about the value of property increasing, housing costs are increasing in the metropolitan Boston area. So some of that will trickle this way. And I think we have a huge opportunity to promote the city of Peabody to Boston businesses, to area businesses, and tell them what we have here. We are in a great location. The highways are here. Our taxes are reasonable, and it's a great place to do business. And I, as a state representative, would be a strong advocate and a cheerleader for Peabody at the State House.
Great, thank you. Craig?
As you might be aware, Peabody is one of 26 designated gateway cities in Massachusetts, and as such, that means that our median household income is lower than the state average, and our attainment of bachelor degree is lower than the state average. Being the case, we're eligible for additional opportunities for funding, and I believe there's a huge opportunity for us to utilize some of that funding and put it to work for not only downtown Peabody, but also Centennial Park as well. I think there's a huge opportunity there to bring businesses in. As Tom said, the proximity to all major routes being right there. I think the knowledge-based economy opportunities that we have with all the colleges close by present an opportunity if we can get some of that money and put it to work for us. We have the 5th lowest commercial tax rate. Oh, sorry. 30 seconds is hard.
It goes quick, I know. Jim?
Thank you. This is where we differ. I have supported every initiative that Mayor Betancourt has brought before us. The new museum that he's proposing, the Children's Museum, I'm all for it. I'm all for putting the bakery in downtown, promoting businesses and bringing them to Peabody and putting people to work. That's what I'm all about. But I have one problem, and this problem's been going on for the past 30, 40 years. You can't get to downtown Peabody. The traffic is killing our downtown.
Okay, we got time.
We have tried.
Sorry.
That was 2 minutes.
No, that was 30 seconds on the rebuttal, yes.
Can I go back to rebuttal? All right.
All right, Phil, your question's going to be posed to Craig.
So Craig, in a democratically controlled House and Senate, is it fair to say that a Democrat is more likely to secure more funding and support for the city of Peabody?
I think that's a great question. I think if you were to look at, I know I just brought up the Gateway City stuff. If you were to look at that alone, we're actually at the bottom of the list in terms of local aid from the Commonwealth to Massachusetts. Of those 26 cities, only Barnstable receives less than Peabody. So I think, the opportunity for a Democrat in the State House to secure more funding might be there, but it hasn't happened for Peabody. And in the close of 2015, the disbursements to Peabody, again, from those 26 cities across Massachusetts that have been identified as needing a little extra support to become as competitive as possible, we haven't, the numbers don't show. We're right at the bottom, only after Barnstable.
Okay, Jim?
Yeah.
30 seconds.
Okay, listen, when I look out out in the crowd, you people. I don't see Democrat, I don't see Republican, I see people. And I will be able to work with Democrat, Republican, Independent to do whatever I can to bring the funding back to Peabody. Times have changed. People are upset at politicians. They're voting them out of office left and right. Politicians are leaving left and right. Why? Because they're not doing the right thing. And when I get to the State House, I will get along with my colleagues and I will work to bring the funding that Peabody deserves. Thank you.
I guess the quick answer, if I can do it in 30 seconds, is I do have some experience having been at the State House before as representative. I know the process. It doesn't matter if you're a Democrat or Republican, although Brian Dempsey, who is the chair of Ways and Means, is a former colleague of mine. I get along very well with him. And I know some people on the other side too, in the Senate, can work with them and work with the agencies and work with the mayor and our state senator and everybody else to pool together our resources to fight the fight to get the money back to Peabody.
Thank you. Sorry. This question's going to Jim.
Okay, Jim. With the change in the minimum wage in Massachusetts rising from $9 to $11 over the next 2 years, do you think this will have a positive or a negative effect on small businesses?
First of all, let me give you my opinion on $9 to $11. That won't buy you a pack of cigarettes, okay? Years ago, you could work for $1 an hour and buy 5 packs of cigarettes. I'm using a bad example here, but today, anybody who's making $11 an hour is not making it. Does it have effect on the businesses? It does, because the businesses are going to have to raise their prices in order to pay for the raises they're giving to for these raises, and it's going to have an effect throughout the whole community. Basically, that's it.
Okay. Tom?
I would say in the short term, going from $10 to $11, we just went from 9 to 10 this January, and then next year we'll go to 11. I don't think it will have a tremendous impact on small business. Having said that, the effort to move to $15 is of concern to everybody. I think incrementally, at some point you may get there, but it's not immediate. Then you would have a problem going if you had to pay your employees an additional $4 an hour, and I think most people understand that it will happen slowly and incrementally.
I think $11 an hour is very difficult to make a living on. Having said that, I think you have to roll out in a responsible way, and there have to be programs that are available for small business owners to incentivize them to pay their employees more. I think any of us in this room can say that $11 an hour is difficult, if not impossible, to raise your family on. I think if we want a strong community, people who have disposable income to pay back into the local economy, it needs to be a minimum wage that's livable. But to get there, it has to be rolled out in a responsible way, and we have to look at what we can do for small businesses to make that happen as well.
Thank you. Bill, next question.
What is your opinion on the recent ruling that juveniles convicted of first-degree murder may become eligible for parole?
Is that me?
Yes, you, Tom.
Well, I liked it the other way, honestly. I think there are some children that unfortunately have kind of the bad seed, and were fully aware of their decision when they made it. So I think that's unfortunate. That's where we need the parole board to step up and be, the law's the law now. I can't change. That was a court ruling. So it's up to legislators and the governor to make sure that we have a parole board that will be fastidious in making sure that if they are going to offer someone parole, that they are fully rehabilitated and will be a contributing member of society. But I'm not confident that will be the case as far as some of the people who committed these crimes.
Craig?
I don't have a problem with the opportunity for parole. I think, again, it falls in the hands of the parole board to make sure that they're making a responsible decision and that the person is in fact rehabilitated. But I think the opportunity for parole, and if someone is rehabilitated, I'm fine with.
Jim?
That's a pretty simple answer. The parole board will make that decision. I don't think I could add much more to that.
Martha?
All right, there's a just scheduling bill in the House that would require businesses to make penalty payments to employees whose schedules changed within a certain number of days before a scheduled shift. The requirements remove the flexibility for both employer and employee. What do you see as the impact of this legislation on the business community?
And this is going to Craig.
I think, from industry to industry, I think obviously the unions are going to be very involved with that to make sure that it's a fair accommodation available with changing schedules. I think, you have to have, as a business owner, you have to know that your employees are going to be there for you, but as an employee, you have to have the flexibility because things come up. I think we'll see a lot of action with the unions on that, and I look forward to seeing how that shakes out.
Jim?
Yeah. I can't add to that either. I agree with them.
It's something, Craig's right in that the unions will negotiate for their members, but there are other business owners who don't have, or employees who don't have representation. As far as a union goes, that it may be a little bit more important that you work with the employers and figure out exactly how that schedule will work. But you need to know a set schedule, both for your planning as a business person, but as an employee as well for your family needs.
Okay, thank you. Bill?
Experience, clearly, it's an issue in most voters' minds. Can you explain why or why not, since you all have different levels of experience?
Well, let me tell you my business experience. My brother and I started the Mitsoulas Painting Corporation when I was in high school. It's in business today, even though my brother passed away and I went on to other things. The Mitsoulas Painting Corporation is still in business. Myself, I went to other businesses. I owned a temp agency. I owned street sweepers. I did many things. I'm a barber today. I'm a real estate agent also. So I know the business community. But as a city councilor, let me tell you, I have some successes that I'm very proud of. And one of them would be to bring business to Peabody. I've done that. There was a site on Webster Street called the it was Webster Street. It was the old A.C. Lawrence fire site. There was a plan to rezone that fire site and put hundreds of apartment units in there. The neighborhood said, Jim, we don't want that. We got together, we put a stop to it, and I went into Boston. They said we could never put a business in that area because business will not come. I went to Boston, I talked to the Chamber of Commerce, I asked who was looking to relocate. I called that company, they came to Peabody, we pushed them through the city council, and today that is the Webster Street Industrial Park, employing many people, and that's because of me. I can tell you other things I did that brought business into the area also. Do I still have time? Mm-hmm. Okay. Holly Street. There was a former congressman tried to rezone that area. We got together, a 4-year battle, we stopped him. He wanted to also do the same thing, put hundreds of apartment units in an already congested neighborhood, which would have required new schools, delete city services. We stopped that. Let me tell you what's there today. You have the Stop and Shop and the Holy Ghost Society because of my doings.
Tom?
Thank you.
Very quickly, if you take my experience being active civically in the city of Peabody since I was in college, my service on the city council, 2 terms in the 80s and early 90s, I served as state representative for 8 years. I served a term on the school committee, and I'm back on the city council now. Plus, I work in town, or in Peabody, as a funeral director, so that experience as well. You combine all those things. There is nobody who brings that unique skill set to the table other than I. All good people, all have good qualifications, but I think if you take the whole, my experience is greater, and I can do the job on day one.
Okay, thank you. Craig?
So I'll just be candid. I'm the only state rep candidate who is not a lifelong Peabody resident, and I feel like I have to explain that everywhere I go. So I've been here for 6 years. I chose to move here with my wife and start our family here. The reason I decided to jump in this race is because I feel like I have the experience that will be very beneficial in this role. Through Best Buddies, we work with 120 school-based chapters in approximately 100 communities throughout the Commonwealth that serves 6,000 participants. I'm responsible for a budget of $1.5 million and 18 staff members. Through that experience, I feel like it's a very good skill set working with those communities already. 30 seconds is really difficult.
It is.
If you thought 2 minutes was bad, Demo.
Saki?
The primary election is on February 2nd. The final special election is on March 2nd. Let's say any one of you has been elected. You'll only have 8 months finishing out the term before you're up for election again. What specifically can voters expect from you to accomplish in 8 months?
And this is going to Tom.
Thanks, Saki.
You're welcome.
Quickly, the first thing we'll have to do, whoever it is who wins, hopefully it is I, will take out your nomination papers. You don't have 8 months. You have, the nomination process will start immediately for the fall election. The first thing I plan on doing as state representative is, well, there are several things, but one is my first piece of legislation would be either filing a bill or filing in the budget reimbursement for this election, so that the city gets back what it's costing us to run this election in the first place. I would also make an effort to introduce myself to every secretary under the governor's administration and let them know that Peabody has a representative and we will be knocking on their door and fighting for what Peabody needs immediately. Then there are small projects here in the city of Peabody. I will work with Mayor Betancourt, Senator Lovely, to make sure that the things that the city is advocating for at the state level are represented by me.
Craig?
The first thing that I would do is reach out to the other gateway city communities, find out what they're doing and how we can do a better job. I would also start immediately looking for additional local aid, because I think it's pretty terrible that of those 26 cities, we're right at the bottom. And then I would also meet with Representative Bradley and let him know that we're not interested in the easement up here in Peabody for a gas line.
Jim?
They'll know me right away. I plan to, before on the floor of the legislature, make a motion to get our pharmaceutical and insurance companies before us and explain why they are so expensive. I'll give you an example.
You only have 30 seconds.
I do.
It's time.
Well, that motion will be heard throughout the state. Thank you.
All right.
Another question.
Sure.
Another bill in the House is in the repeal of Sunday pay premium currently imposed on retailers to pay part-time and half for hourly workers. Now that the minimum wage has reached $11 per hour, this serves as a disincentive to raise base salary of employees or to schedule or even open for business on Sunday. Would you be in support of a repeal of the Sunday blue laws?
Is that me?
No, that's going to,
Just to summarize, time and a half on Sundays, is that
Yeah.
pretty much
Yes.
it? I think honestly, I'd really have to look into that a lot more. I think obviously we mentioned about trying to get the minimum wage up, which is really important, and have a livable minimum wage. But I also understand the stress that might be causing on small business owners. I think there's a way to do it where it's fair for both sides, where you're providing a livable wage, but also some predictability with the employers. I think to mandate anything across the board like that can be a little challenging, and I would spend more time speaking with small business owners and seeing how that affects them, and seeing what the pros and cons on that would be before I'd make a formal decision to vote on it.
Jim?
Yeah,
30 seconds.
Yeah, I go along with Craig also. I'd need to do a little more research on that myself to decide which way I would vote on something like that.
Tom?
My answer is no. That was the agreement when retailers wanted to open on Sunday, and it was a way to offer an incentive to employees to work on Sunday because it is time away from their families as well. So I think that, well, I know that the way the agreement was made is what I would honor and continue to support.
Martha?
Okay. Given the recent announced relocation of GE headquarters to Massachusetts, arguably the result of Connecticut tax policy, how do you feel Massachusetts can balance the progressive labor agenda of the House against the need to maintain an attractive business climate?
And this is going to Jim.
That's to me. Well, I worked for GE many years ago. I worked for GE 2 years. And I remember when I quit, my mother said, "You're crazy. Nobody quits the GE. They all try to get a job there." You know, I welcome the GE to Massachusetts. It's going to bring plenty of funds into Massachusetts. It's going to make it a more friendly environment for other companies to join. And hopefully we could make Massachusetts one of the take away from what Connecticut has and bring it to Massachusetts and make Massachusetts one of the capitals of the industry. But I guess I don't have much more to add than that. I got to do more research on that also. I don't want to sit here and fake something I'm not that clear on, so.
Okay, Tom?
Go ahead.
30 seconds.
Thank you. I think it's clear that GE saw that Massachusetts is progressive and it is business friendly, and there is that balance that already exists. One of the things that they said about Boston when they came here is they stepped out, they liked the feel of the seaport. On top of all the efforts that the administrations of the Mayor of Boston, Mayor Walsh, and Governor Baker made. So we're cognizant of trying to balance business needs with the progressive agenda, but it's
Time.
business needs and people's needs, and I think we do well at it.
Thank you.
I like the feel of Centennial Park myself. I think, you know, again, looking at what's available through the state, I think the commercial tax rate here in Peabody is very affordable for a lot of, very enticing for a lot of business owners. And utilizing the funds that are available to allow us to draw in more businesses in the areas of innovation, entrepreneurship, and economic development. The governor has said that he's remained committed to economic development and not cutting those funds. I think we need a seat at the table. We need to grab some of that money and put it to work for us here.
Phil, you have another question?
I do.
This is going to Tom.
Tom,
Phil?
do you have any personal incentives that you are passionate about that reflect well for the city of Peabody?
Personal incentives? I'm not sure
I should
understand.
say personal, I'm sorry, initiatives. Did I say incentives?
Personal as a personal agenda, no. Personal as do I enjoy public service? Very much so. Since my children are grown, I saw the opportunity to run for the city council again. Have enjoyed that immensely and would like to say that we've been successful at accomplishing a few projects there. My, I guess, personal agenda going to the State House again would be fighting for Peabody, advocating for Peabody. The pipeline, of course, is a big issue where Kinder Morgan has proposed going right through our Independence Greenway, and I have been adamant from the beginning that that should not happen. It doesn't benefit the city of Peabody one iota, and the damage it will do is significant. So, passionate about public policy, that would be one that's local. It impacts us greatly, and it's one that I will fight for determinedly. That's the correct word.
Okay.
I absolutely have a personal agenda. I think I would be absolutely disingenuous saying I didn't. I have 3 children that I'm raising here, and I want this community to be as best as it can possibly be for them. I think in order to have safe communities, a good school, a good opportunity, it costs money. And I think we need to be creative with how we draw businesses into Peabody, increase the amount of revenue that's available so we can have all those great things and still have an affordable, predictable town, affordable city with predictable taxes. It's a tongue twister, I apologize. But yeah, my self-interest is having this community be as strong as it possibly can be for my family.
Thank you. Jim?
I also love Peabody. I'll tell you what really interests me here, and I'm going to do something about it if I get to the State House. We've had traffic study after traffic study after traffic study. We had the 1990 master plan, the North River Task Force. Everything they've proposed before us, we have done it to try and straighten out our traffic problem. Nothing has worked. Traffic studies don't work. I made a motion on the council floor 30 years ago,
Time.
and I made it on the council floor just recently. We're going to get the state and federal civil engineers into this city to finally do
All right, we need to
something
cut, I'm
about
sorry, I
that
got to cut you off, Jim. All right, and the last question in this part of the debate is going to be asked by Saunders.
I'm going to continue on the employee wages
And this is
topic.
going to Craig.
Yeah. Would you be in favor, or do you have any thoughts regarding part-time wage and/or teenage wage?
Part-time, I think it's, again, you got to get back to what's fair for the individual. I think, to be completely forthright with it, I'd have to look into it much more in terms of figuring out how we can have a level that is a fair wage, a livable wage, and realizing that a lot of people do have to pick up a part-time job. It's very different than it was 30 years ago. Most people, trying to raise their family and maybe have supplemental income coming from part-time jobs. So it's very much a vital part of the economy and very much a vital part of families that are trying to take care of all their bills. So it needs to be a significant wage. I think it's important to look at that legislation through those lenses and that perspective, and realize that we need to be doing whatever we can to provide those opportunities for the worker.
Thank you. Jim, 30 seconds.
What kind of question was that? Did
Well-
you say teenage wage?
Excuse me.
I'm not familiar with it. What is teenage wage?
I guess to clarify it for you, with the increases that the world is trying to get to
Right.
with minimum wage,
Right.
would it make sense to create a level for either part-time workers, not to get the full, let's say it goes to 15 over the next 3 or 4 years, to get the full $15, or would it be a value for a teenager who's just entering the workforce to not make the $15, but make a little bit less, especially if it's a part-time job?
So we're talking about two different types of people here. We're talking about the teenagers, save their jobs for them, and the higher price would go to the older people. I don't have a problem with that. I mean, if that is something that can work, or if it's legal, if legally we could do that, don't have a problem with that. That'll give our kids jobs, and it will also preserve the jobs that the older people can get, which is fair to me. Yeah.
I see minimum wage as just that. It's a minimum wage, and we start there for everybody. I do understand the other part of the question is there are a lot of people who are school age, whether high school, college, and they rely on jobs at the big box stores and places like that. So I understand the concern about going to $15 an hour. And that's why I said at the beginning that we will get there slowly. But again, minimum wage is that, minimum.
With that clarification, could I just make a real
Sure.
quick point? I apologize, I think I misunderstood your question. I think whatever the minimum wage is set at, that's what it needs to be. Whether it's a 16-year-old kid who's doing the job or it's somebody who's working just part-time, if it's $15 an hour, it's $15 an hour. I think it's all in the rollout, but if we agree as a Commonwealth that that's what we're going to pay somebody at the minimum wage, that's what they get.
Okay, great. All right, well, that brings us to the end of the questions by our panelists. I'd like to give each of you 2 minutes to give a closing statement, and Jim, we'll start with you.
Okay, thank you. Let me tell you a little about myself. I got into public service for one reason, and that was to make my community a better place. That's why I want to go to the State House, for the same reason. I'm going to tell you I'm running my campaign on $4,000. I am not seeking any endorsements from any unions, any special interest groups. I'm doing it with just my friends and my family. I don't want to go to the State House and owe anybody anything other than the people that elect me. And that's why I do things this way. If I get elected, which I hope I do, when I go to the State House, I'm going to be able to represent the people that elected me. That's my only reason for getting into public service, is to make my community a better place. And I have many ideas, good ideas, that are going to help make Peabody a better place. The election is February 2nd. I'm Jim Matsoulis, and I thank you. I thank the panel. I thank you. I thank all of you for inviting me here today. Thank you very much.
Tom?
Thank you. I'm a lifelong resident of Peabody. For those of you who don't know me, graduated from Peabody Veterans Memorial High School, Salem State College with a degree in political science, and was elected to the city council right out of college, where I served 2 terms, and then was elected to the State House, where I served 4 terms, and then with a young family decided that my efforts should go elsewhere. I did serve a term on the school committee back when my children were smaller, and we were able to implement full-day kindergarten. We were able to get the grandstands and the press box built at the high school, among other things, and was reelected, or elected again, I should say, to the city council 2 years ago and reelected this past November. I am very interested in taking all my experience, my private life, my political experience, and putting it together to be the best state representative for Peabody so that we have a seat at the table and I can go do that job starting day one.
Excellent. Craig?
I am very interested in serving as your state representative because I love this community. Again, I am not from Peabody. I did not have the pleasure of growing up here. I have lived here for 6 years and moved to this community because it's such a wonderful place. It's a great place to raise a family. It's a great place to live and be a part of a community, but we can do much better, I think, and that's why I've decided to run. Specifically regarding our fair share of local aid and our opportunity to utilize some funding available through the gateway cities, we're just not doing a good enough job. Flat out, I mean, for us to be at the very bottom of that list with local aid, for our net disbursement in 2015 to be less than 0.5% of the 300+ million that's available for gateway cities is laughable. We should be taking that money and put it to work for Peabody. We're doing a good job as a city, but we're doing it on our own. We need the state to reinvest in Peabody and help us get to the next level. And I think with that, we can have our great schools, we can have our safe community, we can keep the city affordable, we can keep taxes low, we can keep them predictable. And that's really why I'm running. I feel like my experience as a director of Best Buddies and working with 100 communities throughout Massachusetts has given me relationships across the Commonwealth so that I can effectively build those relationships on day one with legislators to work for Peabody. My background has been really Best Buddies and building relationships and working with diverse interests. I think that's a skill set that'll be very beneficial. I also have a bachelor's from St. A's, a master's degree in public administration from Northeastern, and an executive leadership certificate in nonprofit management from Duke. I think between the skill set and the education, I'm a good fit for the position, and I can proudly serve the good people of Peabody on day one.
Great. I want to thank all of the candidates for joining us today. It's been a great dialogue, and I wish you the best of luck on February 2nd.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're going to continue the debate now with our Republican candidates. With joining us is Jacqueline Corriveau, campaign manager for Ann Manning Martin, and Stephanie Peach, legislative aide to the previous Representative Leah Cole. Thank you for joining us. Questions will be posed by members of the Peabody Area Chamber of Commerce. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to answer a question, and then the other candidate will have 30 seconds for a rebuttal. At the end, we'll give you each 2 minutes to provide a closing statement. Okay. So with that, we're going to start with Bill Woods with the first question, going to Stephanie.
Given the recent statistics regarding the ongoing opiate crisis that plagues not only Essex County, but the entire country, do you have an opinion on how to best deal with and help minimize overdoses and deaths?
Yeah, thank you. That's a great question. It's a huge problem facing, as you said, the Essex County, here in Peabody, our entire Commonwealth, and the entire country. It's a very big problem. I think there are a lot of proposed bills up there that I saw when I was a legislative aide that would reduce the amount of prescription opiate pills that you can get on your first time getting pain medications. I think that's a big problem, is we have too many pills on the streets, which leads, a lot of people, when you can't get the pills or can't afford them, you move on to heroin. And it's a problem that I've seen affect people I went to high school with, and it's really sad. We need to move forward. We need to work collaboratively with our police departments, with our sheriff departments, and and with our public health department to make sure we're all on the same page, because there are so many things that lead to addiction, and we need to make sure that we're working as a team and not working separately to fight the same problem. We'll get there a lot faster.
Jacqueline, 30 seconds.
Sure. I think we're off to a very good start. I think equipping our local law enforcement with Narcan is a really good start. It saves lives, but also it's something we have to look at as it's not the only solution that we can have. Like Stephanie mentioned, the bill has left committee to make sure that we can reduce the number of pills that people can get in a prescription for back pain or similar pain, which is very important because people become dependent on those pills very easily. One of my best friends growing up, his father actually became very dependent, and he's in one of his, I think his 4th stint in rehab. So no previous substance abuse issues at all. So that's just, oh, sorry.
That's okay. Next question, Martha, will go to Jacqueline, and you'll have 2 minutes.
Okay, Jacqueline, Mayor Betancourt has made it a priority of his administration to bring more businesses and residents to a revitalized downtown. Peabody's had some success in this regard over the past few years. Do you agree with the mayor's focus? And if so, what specifically could you do as a rep to move the process forward?
Thank you. So I absolutely agree with the mayor's focus. I think the downtown has a lot of potential, so does Centennial Drive. And one thing that I think we really should look into is the fact that Peabody is an economic opportunity area and has been designated so. There are a lot of opportunities that we can take, like TIF programs, to offer kind of like a temporary tax break to companies coming into the city, so that not only incentivizes them to come in, but once they're in, they'll stay. It's what Beverly did with the Cummings Center. They're going to be in there for 50 years, and they got a 5-year tax break just for coming in. So that's a huge push that they made. I work in the Cummings Center. It worked. There is hardly any empty offices, storefronts, anything. And I think that's definitely something Peabody should look into. Another thing that they can look into is the storefront revitalization, when the state actually partners with the business, and it gives them the opportunity to revitalize their storefront to attract people into the store. And not only will it bring businesses into Peabody, like new businesses, but it can also help to revitalize the businesses that are there.
Great. Thank you. Stephanie, 30 seconds.
Yeah, I think the mayor's plan is great. I think there's along with downtown, we need to be focusing on Centennial Drive. I think there's a lot of potential with the new rezoning that we just did in the city. Working at the State House, I helped the city bring in a grant for downtown, which we'll be using in the next few years to help our businesses grow, to use some of the empty buildings that are down there and make them, have a mixed zone down there with housing and businesses. I think that works really well. We need to have a walkable downtown, much like our neighbor Salem.
Thank you. Phil?
Stephanie?
To Stephanie, yes.
Hi, Stephanie. In a democratically controlled House and Senate, is it fair to say that a Democrat's more likely to secure more funds and support for the city of Peabody? And if not, why not?
Absolutely not. Our local aid is done through a formula, and that's the biggest chunk of money we get from the state. And in the past 2 years that I've been working for a Republican for the city of Peabody, we've been able to secure many grants for our city. Peabody's been designated a gateway city, which isn't a good thing to get that designation, but once you have it, you have funds available to try to bring up your city and bring up the people who live within it. I think that Republicans have more leeway, actually, and have more opportunities to bring in funds, because right now we're under Republican administration in the governor's office, and when you don't always agree with the Speaker of the House as a Democrat, you can be punished through things like holding funds for your city and holding bills for your city. As a Republican, the Speaker expects me to disagree with him. Most of the time, most of the bills that we pass up there are unanimous, so there's not as much disagreement as people may think. But when you do disagree with the Speaker, there's no ramifications. It's expected. We have a great working relationship. I think Speaker DeLeo is a nice guy and he's level-headed. I think we can work well together. And as someone who's been on Beacon Hill, I know the Democrats have shared offices with them. You need to build those relationships in order to get things done, and I've already built those. So,
Jacqueline?
Thank you. So I don't think it's going to be an issue at all. I think Republicans and a Republican rep can absolutely get the funding and the local aid that we need. And I've talked a lot about, on the campaign trail, my relationship with our governor and with our lieutenant governor, and I think that can be a real positive if I were elected. I will have a direct line to his ear, and I will make sure that Peabody gets the funding that it needs to move forward and to revitalize the downtown to keep our seniors in their homes. I don't see it at all as being an issue. But like Stephanie touched upon, we are a minority, but we do have a lot of leeway, I think, when it comes to, like she said, the Speaker doesn't expect the Republicans to agree with him 100% of the time.
Thank you. Sarkis?
Ladies, with the minimum wage gone increased to $10 and then again the next 11, are you in favor of it going to 15? And if you are, what do you think? How do you think that will affect small businesses?
Jacqueline, that goes to you.
Sure, thank you. So I actually read what you had to say on the Lynn item, Deanne, which was a really good thing to point out, is that more than half of the businesses in Peabody were not affected by the minimum wage increase because they already offer competitive wages. What people were really concerned about, or business owners were really concerned about, was the cost of providing health care to their employees. I don't support increasing the minimum wage to $15. I think it's bad for small business. If there was a way to mandate that Walmart do it and small businesses not do it, that would be great. But that's not what we're looking at. So just going back to what you touched upon in the Lynn item, is that we really have to listen to our local business owners in Peabody. This isn't going to be as big of an issue for Peabody, but it certainly is across the Commonwealth in poorer communities where people are working, for $11 for 40 hours. But that's something they have to address on a local level.
Stephanie, 30
Yeah,
seconds.
I'm certainly not in favor of increasing our minimum wage to $15. I think the last increase that we did do in the House has done some damage to our local businesses. I think it's a difficult thing to try to balance. Maybe you don't hire that teenager that you would have hired if the minimum wage wasn't going to go to $11. You're not hiring as many people. You're not able to hire as many people because you're, increasing the minimum wage. We're not increasing business. If you're not increasing, your bottom line as a business, then how do you afford more employees as the minimum wage increases?
Thank you. Bill, next question to Stephanie.
What is your opinion on the recent ruling that juveniles convicted of first-degree murder may become eligible for parole?
I think it was a very controversial ruling. One of the caucuses that Representative Cole was a part of, and I did a lot of work with, was a criminal justice reform caucus, and they focused a lot on juveniles and mostly drug convictions. I do know people who are being affected by this ruling. I think it's very difficult for the victims' families. It's hard to say. It's each situation is different in the situation that occurred. I think it's hard to look at juveniles and see did they know what they were doing. I think a lot of the times you can say yes. I would hope that our parole board will keep those people who are not fit to become a part of our society again. I hope that they will look at those cases on a case-by-case basis and make sure that those people don't re-enter our society, and God forbid anything happen if they do. So,
Jacqueline?
Thank you. So I think this is a really difficult situation because they are juveniles, but my father was a parole officer. I used to work for parole when I was in college, so I've come face to face with not juveniles, but first degree and second degree murderers. I've heard them testify, and Stephanie's right, it is a case-by-case situation. You have to look at each individual and what qualities they have. Can they re-enter society without being a threat? I absolutely do think that it's something that needs to be addressed. Juveniles committing first degree murder, is it a character issue or is it circumstantial?
Thank you. Bill? Oh, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
Martha. And this is going to Jacqueline.
Okay, Jacqueline, there's a just scheduling bill in the House that would require businesses to make penalty payments to employees whose schedules change within a certain number of days before a scheduled shift. The requirements remove the flexibility for both employer and employee. What do you see as the impact of this legislation on the business community?
Well, for small businesses, I would think it would be very detrimental. I used to work in retail, and it is very difficult for the employee to make an adjustment if an employer changes the schedule quickly. But I worked for Talbot's, that's a very big company, and I would expect a company like that to make reparations if they were to change a schedule quickly without notifying the employee within 2 weeks or so, which is usually the given time. But if I worked for a smaller business and they, someone calls out or someone gets sick and knows they can't come in 2 or 3 days, I think we need to offer those small businesses a lot more leeway, because we can't nickel and dime them like that. That's not fair. They're already paying, rent, taxes. It's not a way to make small business succeed in Peabody, that's for sure.
Stephanie?
I don't agree with the bill. I've read the legislation. As someone who, I waited tables through college, I currently wait tables now to get through the campaign. I depend on the fact that I can pick up a shift, I can drop a shift, I can change my schedule on the fly within hours of having to work. That is how I made money through college. And part of the legislation is about the clopin. You close at night and you open in the morning, and they want to make it so if you do that, you have to get paid more money an hour to do it. I did it willingly, and that's how you make money in those businesses, and I would not support that legislation.
Thank you. Thank you. Bill?
Hi, Stephanie. Experience, clearly, it's an issue in the minds of most voters. Could you explain why or why not?
Why experience is important or
Yes.
not? I think experience is very important, and I've been up on Beacon Hill for over 2 years, and I think that allows you, especially we've been without a representative for the last few months, and prior to that we had a special election. We can't afford to waste any time. There can't be a learning curve, and I've been up there. I know the people who are up there, the representatives and the staffers. As staffers, we like to joke and say we do everything but press the button. And it's true, a lot of the time you're doing the research, you're doing the legwork for a lot of this legislation, and that's how you get things done. That's how you get things before committees. That's how you get bills to the floor of the House. And it's incredibly important. It's vital that we have someone up there who knows the people in the building, knows where to go, knows how to get around, and understands the process, because this representative will be walking into the State House at a time where we're doing the state budget. And Peabody needs to have a strong voice, someone who understands the budget process, someone who has been there, who's filed the amendments, and has worked with the staffers through the budget process to make sure our amendments go through for our city.
Thank you. I agree. I think experience is absolutely necessary, but where should that experience come from? I've been working for the past 10 years in Peabody, and I think that experience is extremely valuable as well. You have to know the community that you're representing. I worked actually with you, Martha, in launching the first farmers market on the Peabody lawn, Peabody Institute Library lawn. I worked with Haven from Hunger, getting to know the most vulnerable people in our community. So that's where my experience comes from. I also have a good experience with our governor. He appointed me to one of his advisory councils back in September. So I think that paired with my experience in Peabody is a pretty good combination.
Thank you. Sorry.
This question is going to kind of follow through with what you guys were just talking about. The primary election is February 2nd. The final special election is March 2nd.
First.
Let's say,
First.
oh, it says March 2nd on here, so I'm going by this date.
Okay.
Let's say that you're elected. You only have 8 months before this whole process goes on again. What can we expect as voters from you during that time frame?
Jacqueline, that goes to
Directed
you.
towards me. During that time frame, I hope to work with our small business community and with the mayor to revitalize the downtown. I hope to listen to our business owners, our restaurant owners, our store owners. I had the pleasure of going in on Small Business Saturday and getting to know a lot of the business owners that I had never met before, and they have wonderful things to offer our community, and I wish that people knew more about that. So that'll be one of my priorities. Also working with our seniors to help to listen to them and really make sure that they have the tools that they need to stay in their homes for as long as they can. So I want to make myself as accessible as possible during those 8 months, because like Stephanie mentioned, we've gone way too long without a representative. There's a lot of time to make up for. There's a lot of people whose concerns need to be dealt with immediately. And that would be my biggest focus, is making sure that our biggest concerns are addressed with our seniors, with our business communities, with our working families.
Stephanie?
Like I just mentioned, the first thing that you're going to walk into the State House to is the state budget. And if you've never read the state budget before, if you've never gone through the budget process, you don't have the experience that you need to get Peabody what it needs. I was successful in helping Representative Cole and Senator Lovely secure $100,000 for Peabody for flood mitigation study in our last budget, a budget that was very tight, and a lot of local aid, a lot of local projects were cut. So I think that, you know, I have that experience, and I know what the issues of the city of Peabody are, and the first thing I do is meet with our mayor to make sure that we know what he needs from the state and we can secure that funding.
Thank you. Bill?
Another bill in the House is the repeal of Sunday pay premium currently imposed on retailers to pay time and a half for hourly workers. Now that the minimum wage has reached $11 an hour, this serves as a disincentive to raise base salary of employees or to schedule or even open business on Sunday. Would you be in support of a repeal of the Sunday blue laws?
Yes. I worked in retail where it was subject to those blue laws. Sunday isn't what it used to be. Sunday it was difficult to get people to work. You needed to provide the incentive. I know going through high school and college, working at CVS, that that was a big boost to my paycheck, but I was making $8 an hour then. And with companies like that, they look at the bottom line. They're dealing with healthcare costs. They're already cutting people's hours. They don't want to pay you full-time to be a full-time employee because they have to provide all these other benefits to you. We're overburdening our businesses with these laws, with federal regulations and state regulations, and that's not good for our businesses, and it's not good for our employees. If we're not going to hire people because we can't afford it, we can't afford to pay them on Sundays, then our unemployment costs are up. We need to look at what the real issue is. I thought that raising the minimum wage last time was a Band-Aid to a bigger issue that we have in society. We need to look at this problem from all directions and work collaboratively to make sure that we can bring the wages of our people here in Peabody up without burdening our businesses. And I would certainly be in favor of repealing those blue laws because, I work in a restaurant now and there's no time and a half for me. And I think if there was, that would disincentive people to tip me more if they knew that I was making more money an hour. We need to work with both employers and employees to make sure we're finding the right solutions.
Jacqueline?
So in Peabody specifically, I just bringing up that article again in the Lynn item where you were quoted, Dan, is that it's not an issue. Minimum wage for most employers in Peabody is not an issue, so I would absolutely I absolutely would support repealing that law. It's not business friendly, especially for our small businesses, and if we should leave it up to the businesses to incentivize their employees. Federal and state mandates are not the way to do it.
Okay. Thank you. Martha?
Given the recent announced relocation of GE headquarters to Massachusetts, arguably the result of Connecticut tax policy, how do you feel Massachusetts can balance the progressive labor agenda of the Mass House against the need to maintain an attractive and competitive business climate?
This is to you, Jacqueline.
Oh, to me, thank you. So I think it's wonderful that GE came to Boston. It's certainly going to provide us with a lot of jobs. But we do have to look at the fact, we have GE and Lynn already, and I know they're the last union shop, but we do have to look at them as an opportunity. We want to look at them as a business partner. We can't be looking at them as a threat to anything. We can't be looking at them as, I'm not sure how to articulate this, but it's an opportunity. It's not something, we absolutely have to work with them. We absolutely have to make sure that that they have control over what they are doing. We can't put too many state regulations on them, and we have to make sure that they have the tools that they need to succeed in Massachusetts for sure.
Stephanie?
I think it's great that GE's decided to settle here in Massachusetts. I'd like to see more businesses be attracted to Massachusetts. And when we compare it to Connecticut, we look pretty good. But we need to make sure that we're maintaining our corporate taxes to be a fair, compatible rate in the state of Massachusetts. We need to bring more businesses in. GE isn't going to solve our economic problems. And they're settling in Boston, and Boston has a lot of businesses in it to begin with. We need to think about the suburbs of Boston and the other parts of our state as well when it comes to bringing in resources.
Thank you. Bill? This question's going to go to Stephanie.
Stephanie, do you have any personal major initiatives that you are passionate about in support of Peabody? So do you have a personal area, a personal project, for example, that could garner support at the State House for the city of Peabody?
A project within the city?
Mm-hmm.
I think we need to focus on our downtown. And I think we need to focus on more affordable housing in the city of Peabody. A lot of my friends I went to high school with have since moved out of the city because our rents are too high, especially compared to our neighbors. I decided to buy a house in Peabody when I was looking. My husband and I purchased because it was half the cost of renting a house or renting an apartment in Peabody. I think that as I was doing at the State House with Representative Cole, we can continue to work and fight for grant money at the state level and at the federal level as well to make sure that we're bringing in initiatives to help our downtown and our businesses revitalize make it a more attractive downtown, much like the city of Salem. And we need to be able to bring the people here to live here that are going to utilize the downtown at the same time. So as I mentioned before, we need to collaborate on all fronts for big initiatives like this. I think I live downtown. I live in Ward 3. I can walk to Main Street, and I would love to have more reasons to walk down to Main Street. I'd like to see a lot of businesses open and thrive there, and bring other people from surrounding areas down to our downtown to see what Peabody has to offer.
Jacqueline?
Thank you. So my personal agenda would be addressing the opiate crisis. I love what they're doing at the high school. They have the new health center there. I'd really like to see us nip this in the bud. Like I mentioned, my father was a parole officer. I used to work for parole. It's not just a public health problem, it's a public safety problem. And that is something that Peabody absolutely has to make sure is nipped in the bud immediately. I've seen what happens. I've worked with people who are victims of this addiction. Not here. I don't want it.
Thank you. Now our last question will come from Sarkis to Jacqueline.
Okay, I'm going to go back to minimum wage for a minute. With the ever-increasing minimum wage that people seem to be pushing, would you be in favor of creating a base pay for either part-time workers and or teenage workers?
Part-time workers and teenage workers really don't rely on it to make their living. When I was a teenager, I was working 15 hours a week in high school and then 20 to 25 in college. I would not be in favor of that. It straps our small business community. It's another regulation. It prevents them from becoming successful and growing. I think what we really need to focus on here is once those part-time workers might be, a mom who's working part-time around her kid's schedule, or a teenager who's working part-time after school. Those people aren't the ones who are saddled with the same responsibility as someone who's working full-time on minimum wage. And I think we need to treat those two things very separately, but address them the same way. Regulation is not the answer here for these small businesses.
So you wouldn't be in favor of setting a wage limit?
No.
With the last minimum wage increase, there were some amendments proposed that would set a teen minimum wage and a training minimum wage, and I was very supportive of those amendments, and so was Representative Cole. And I think at the end of the day, that would have been that we would have been doing our small businesses justice at that point. I think I would definitely support. A lot of people do work part-time, and they work multiple part-time jobs to support their families. And I think there should be a teen wage that allows us to teach our teenagers the work ethic and to work hard, but there should also be a 90-day training wage that would allow our businesses to see whether someone's a good fit or not before they start having to pay them the full minimum wage.
Great, thank you. So that brings us to the end of our questions from the panel, and I would like to give you each 2 minutes to present a closing statement. And Stephanie, we'll start with you.
Great. So I'd just like to reiterate the fact that I have the experience, the energy, and the education to go up to Beacon Hill and get things done for Peabody. I have my master's in public administration, which I completed last year while working full-time at the State House for Representative Cole. People of Peabody are sick and tired of the status quo. We're tired of the tax and spend that's going on Beacon Hill. We need someone who's going to go up there and stand for what's right, stand for lower taxes, more local aid for our cities and towns, so that we have control here in the city on what our taxes are being spent on. We don't need the state to tell us what to do. We need to work hard together to get everything done for our city. Our city can be great, and it will be great if you elect me on February 2nd. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you to the Peabody Area Chamber of Commerce for being here with us today. It's so great that we get to sit down with you and really address some of the issues going on in our city. But I'd just like to close in saying that I've been working the past 10 years in Peabody, and I've been listening to you, the taxpayer, and I know what your hopes and concerns are for the city. When you pair my experience of launching the first Peabody Farmers Market on the Library Institute lawn, my experience with Haven from Hunger, pair that with the experience I have working with our governor both on the campaign trail but also in his office when he hand-selected me for one of his advisory councils. I have the experience and the know-how to make sure that Peabody can get more local aid and we can keep more of our seniors in their homes. It's a necessity that we have the attention that we need on Beacon Hill. And if you elect me, I guarantee you that I will have the governor's ear, and I absolutely will be the one who can bring Peabody the representation it needs. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us today. There's an independent candidate, Chris Gallagher, which will not be in the February 2nd primary election and therefore was not included in the debate leading up to that race. He will face the two winners to emerge from the primary for a three-way special election on March 1st. The 12th Essex represents the majority of Peabody residents, including wards 1 to 4 and precincts 1 and 3 in Ward 5. I want to thank you for joining us for this debate, and please remember to vote on February 2nd and on March 1st. As we've seen in recent election, every vote counts and can make a difference. Thank you. This concludes our debate, and I want to thank the candidates, our panelists, and thank you for tuning in.